I guess this next section will look at, how people that have had a career previously or have
Mhm.
other experience, and, how do you look at those transferable skills
Mhm.
and make that shift to a more purpose-driven role and career. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
question here saying, I want to do a more purpose-driven role, but I don't know what roles are out there. Like,
Mm.
where do you start?
Where do you start? Absolutely. So this is a fairly common conversation that I have with number of people. So I think it kind of comes down to where we sort of started earlier in today's conversation around, where do I start if I'm overwhelmed or I want to start my career? It's getting curious about the problems you want to solve and the industry. So again, whether that's renewables or whether it's social or whether you're really passionate around decarbonisation or net zero, just starting to get some clarity around what areas you're most interested in and what problems do you think you might want to solve for an organisation. I guess the next level is, there's a whole range of roles and opportunities out there. But again, you might need to transition into a similar role that you already do, but with a more progressive organisation in terms of their sustainability effort and seek out opportunities to include sustainability as a part of your role with the view to transition into a position where that is your substantive position rather than an element of what you actually do. So there's a whole variety of roles out there. We sort of tend to divide them into the more, I guess, science, environmentally data-driven aspects of it. So if you're really drawn to the science and the technicality, then that sort of opens up a whole field of opportunities. And then there are opportunities that are more around behavioural change, social impact, looking more holistically at opportunities. So get curious around the types of problems you want to solve, get curious around the organisations who are delivering around those. I think it's really helpful to understand and speak to people in the industry and also understand what's material to an organisation. So, I manage a lot of chats where people are interested in circularity, for example. And, my conversation with them is understanding, well, where does circularity show up in an organisation? Is it 100% of their focus or is it 5% of their focus in terms of their core business? So I think understanding the reality of how much the work that you want to do is actually relevant to the organisation that you want to land in.
Great. Question here about experience only being overseas. So, what if my experience is only overseas?
Mhm.
Uh, This is less of a challenge now, thankfully, than it was previously. We did find
Mm.
historically that if you had worked internationally, it was very hard to transition back into the Australian market because of the regulations and compliance.
Mm.
And I think evolving nature of sustainability, where hiring managers didn't necessarily understand what the role was,
Great.
greater understanding now, but also greater appreciation for those skills and experience from overseas, where particularly the UK and Europe are a few years ahead of us. You reference circularity.
Mm.
I think Australia is still in the position where it's very easy to put things in the ground. If you go to somewhere like Germany,
They
very
don't
much a
have the
closed,
space.
no, very much a closed loop system. So,
Mm.
so certainly look at how you can make that transition. If you are moving from overseas, think about uh, the roles that you take on. So try
Mm.
not to make too many leaps. If you're moving from one country to another, maybe don't transition from one industry to another industry.
Oh.
So try and align as many things as possible to make that transition smooth, and then look
Mm.
at building your career here in Australia.
Absolutely. And I guess the other reality around that, and Richard just touched on that, is, having that appreciation. If where you've come from is more advanced in their solutions, let's say circularity is been a big focus in the country where you've been working in the organisation that you've been delivering those solutions around, understanding where Australia is at holistically as a country in terms of the level of literacy and maturity in our current market and understanding what your contribution might be to an organisation here in Australia. Because if they're at the start of that journey, they may not yet appreciate that level of work that you're doing. So sort of meeting
Yeah.
the market where it's at and having some humility around that as well.
Yeah. So what transferable skills and experience can people leverage to transition into the
Mm.
sector?
Absolutely. So I think initially when people start looking at position descriptions or start looking at ads, there's lots of jargon in there. I think we talk about the sustainability alphabet soup when it comes to reporting. So there's lots of unfamiliar language. There's always transferable skills, as we've mentioned earlier today. Sustainability, the heart of it is around behavioural change. It's about influencing. It's around being a really good communicator. So they are all really, really key transferable skills. But my advice would be to critically evaluate against a position description that you're looking at. Can you deliver against those problems? Can you actually walk into the boardroom and have the credibility that the executive needs around sustainability as a subject matter? Because it may be that you transition at a similar level of role where you already are, with a clear mandate to sort of mature your career in that space with the help of professional development and mentoring. So I think if you're stepping into a blended corporate role where sustainability is an element of the focus, then that is a far more successful transition of your skills rather than applying for a really senior sustainability manager where that's not been your full experiences yet.
Right. And then there's one more here that's come through. So how do I use networking opportunities to help me find a job? And I guess we get asked this in a couple of ways. So one is how do you use it, but like where do I go? Where do I find particular events? There are a lot of events out there that you can attend in various communities, and it depends on the interest as well. You know, if it's within the finance sector, it may be Australian Sustainable Finance Institute. If it's broader business, it may be the UN Global Compact. So looking at their events, if it's smaller business, it may be something like B Lab or looking to connect them with that. So look, there are a number of ways that you can plug into those networking events. The other thing is with LinkedIn, everyone's accessible, and again, it is a highly networked space. I guess you just need to be mindful of how you use it, how you leverage it. It's very easy for people to send a note and say, "Can we grab a coffee?" or "I'm looking for a job," but you need to think that they may have had half a dozen messages like that day. So how do you actually look to make it meaningful or worthwhile, or is there some way that you can reciprocate or look for a personal connection? And in sustainability in Australia, I think there's only 2 degrees of separation. So you can get to most people, but I think it's just thinking about the proposition as well.
And I guess in addition to that, I think we would strongly recommend using those network opportunities to mature your thinking and your literacy around the new space. So let's say again, you are really, keen to get into the renewable energy space, but that language and that literacy is not yet developed. So attending events that are specific around that space will be really, really good.